Um, Hello, my name is Richard Jenkins. I work for Elizabeth Norman. Thank you for joining. Today's session is an informational session on your finances with Naomi. Naomi is a first-class graduate from LSE, worked at Fidelity and Merrill Lynch for over 20 years, and now is a representative of St James's Place Financial Planning and Wealth Management. The idea of today is to go through the presentation, but also a bit of a Q&A. So you can either show your camera or raise your hand, and I'll unmute you and you can ask questions directly. Or also, if you're not comfortable doing that and you just want to pop a question in the box, just put it in the chat and then I'll ask it at the appropriate moment. There'll also be a chance to go through things at the end as well. But yeah, if you want to get involved or you've got any specific questions that are useful at the time that you might forget, then do jump in. But yeah, just raise your hand and I'll unmute you. If that's okay. So I'll pass over to you, Naomi. So that's okay.
Thank you so much, Richard, and thank you very much for inviting me along to talk to everybody about income tax. Okay, I know it's not the most exciting of topics, but there are some lesser understood anomalies when it does come to tax, and there are things that we can do about it. So given that knowledge is power, I hope you'll find this session useful to help you understand and ultimately become really efficient with your taxes. And tax efficiency usually equals money saving, which is a good thing, hopefully, and much more exciting than just the topic of discussing taxes. So today we're going to chat about the basics about income tax. We will look at these anomalies that I talked about, and we will look at some solutions as well. So let me just get started. We're going to start off with income tax basics. So you can see this colourful chart here, and it just goes through the basics of income tax. So you can see that green bar at the bottom, that's your personal allowance. If you earn £12,570 or less, you don't pay any tax because it comes within that personal income tax allowance. If you're a basic rate taxpayer, that means you earn between that £12,570 and £50,270. You'll pay 20% income tax on that blue section. And again, the yellow section, if you're a higher rate taxpayer, that's 40% tax, and an additional rate taxpayer, it's 45% tax if you earn over £125,140. Now, that's probably complicated enough for many people, but actually there's more to it than that. So without further ado, I'm just going to crack on with what those tax sinkholes actually are. Now, a sinkhole does tend to appear out of nowhere. You don't know that it's coming, and so that's probably why these tax traps or these tax anomalies have been given this name, because I don't think many people know that they're coming, and when they do, it really feels like maybe a hole has been opened up beneath your income and swallowing up a lot more than you really would like it to. So let's start with that £100,000 income tax trap. Okay, and what I would say is we're going through lots of complicated topics here. I'll try and go slowly but efficiently. So if anything isn't quite clear, do feel free to just give me a nudge or a poke so that we can just make sure I go over it again, because it's not easy. I do like to translate the complexities, but it doesn't necessarily always kind of sink in first time round. So that £100,000 income tax trap. Right, if you earn over £100,000, this is going to be you, right? So You probably think that if you earn between 100,000 and 125,140 pounds, you're only paying 40% tax at the higher rate. Well, actually, you are likely to be paying 60% tax. That's because your £12,570 personal allowance that I talked about before, it was that little green bar at the bottom, that is tapered away at a rate of £1 for every £2 that you earn above £100,000. So what this means is that what you earn over £100,000, yes, it is taxed at 40%, but you're also going to be losing some of that tax-free allowance that helps make up part of your basic rate tax band. So you're going to start paying 20% on those first few pounds that before £100,000 income, you were earning tax-free. So what it does is it adds that 20% to your higher rate tax band. So to put it simply, for every £100 of income that you earn between £100,000 and £125,140, you only take home £40 after income tax. All right, so that's £40 is taken away in income tax, but £20,000 is lost due to that gradual erosion and removal of the personal allowance, which basically is where you get that 60% tax rate. Okay, so hopefully you're all still with me and you're still sitting down and staying calm on this one now. I'm actually going to go through the next tax sinkhole or tax charge for you. Okay, so this is the high income child benefit tax charge, and this impacts anyone that has children and either they or their partner earns over £50,000. Okay, so let's look at what this charge is. If you earn between £50,000 and £60,000, you will lose 1% of your child benefit for every £100 as you go up from £50,000. Okay, now the slight issue with this is also the more children you have, the greater that charge. So I'll give you an example. Okay, I have 3 children. Now that is over £2,900 in child benefits per year for my 3 kids, which if you quickly do the maths, if I earn £60,000, i.e. £10,000 more than £50,000 in a year, I will lose not just, I'll be paying 40% tax because that on that £10,000, that's then higher rate tax, but I'm going to lose £2,900 of child benefit, which is basically an extra 29% of tax just for earning that extra £10,000 at £60,000. So that's yet another tax. So obviously, if you earn over £100,000 and you have children, you are seeing that there's a bit of a trend here, that there are some extra taxes you may not have known about. When it comes to child benefits, personally, I like to still receive that child benefit into a high interest rate savings account. It's a very nice way of saving without intentionally doing it. Then my tax return sorts out the rest. But if you do also want to know about the extra benefits of me or you receiving child benefit, if you have a child that's aged under 12 and you receive child benefit, you automatically receive national insurance credits. So really important if you've got a partner who maybe doesn't earn at all, but if you earn over that £50,000, they may want to still receive the child benefit so that they can also receive national insurance credits and make sure that they're still building up allowance for their state pension. But you can also elect to receive the national insurance credits, but not physically be paid the child benefit if you really don't want that hassle of what comes in goes out as well. So hopefully that still all makes sense to you. And whilst you absorb all of that, I'm going to let you know that there's one more inadvertent tax on you if you earn, in this case, over £100,000. Now, this is slightly different because we don't exactly know how much it's going to cost you. But if you've got those children, so let's say you've got your 3 children, you're earning over 100,000, you're losing your child benefit, you're losing your personal allowance, you will also lose your free childcare. Okay, now it does depend on how much childcare costs in your area, and also depends on the situation. It is quite complex, but it's also what we call a cliff edge loss in benefit. That's a cliff edge because if you earn £99,900, you will be entitled to the full childcare. But if your employer gives you a pay rise and of £100, £200, you lose everything. Thousands or even tens of thousands of pounds in childcare will be lost just due to those few £100 of extra earnings. Okay, so I hope that's the worst of this webinar over. And you're probably wondering, well, why did you join? Because I've just made you incredibly depressed. So let's look at what solutions there are. This is the most important part. Knowledge is power. It can be complicated. It can be really unhappy reading or understanding. But if there's something you can do about it, let's at least look through those solutions for you. All of those solutions are to do, obviously, with your salary, and let's make a start on those. Okay, a little checklist here. Unfortunately, it is little, but the 3 things you can do are contributing to a pension, donating to charity via gift aid, or there are some investments that are tax efficient and provide you with some tax refunds. So without further ado, let us go on to the first part. Right, I sometimes refer to pensions as the P word because for many it's a bit of a swear word in that they're not understood. They're very complicated. As you know, the tax system is very complicated. It's probably feels a lot more complicated right now than it did 10 minutes ago. But a pension is really just an easy way of saving for the long term, for when you stop working and you stop earning money. Okay, so you can't access it until you reach a certain age. It could pay you an income in retirement or even before retirement or when you need it because you're not earning once you're older than that age, when you can access it. And there are certain advantages to it as well. So let's get on to those advantages. Okay, the main advantage is there's tax relief available on your investments. Now, it does depend how you pay into your pension, but in the simplest form, £100 into your pension, if you're a basic rate taxpayer, gets £20 of tax relief. If you're a higher rate taxpayer, it gets £40 of tax relief. And if you're an additional rate taxpayer, it gets £45 of tax relief. Okay, now you may start to get a sense of where that can help you. Obviously, if you're a 60% taxpayer, it will get you that £60 of tax relief as well. Okay, there are 3 different ways you can pay into a pension. If you've got a personal pension, it's called relief at source. If you put £80 into your pension, you automatically get basic rate tax relief. So you automatically get £20 put in there for you. And then the rest of it, if you're higher rate taxpayer or above, will be reimbursed to you through self-assessment tax return. If you're employed, it's usually through the net payer way, which is your payslip. After you've paid national insurance, your money, your £100, goes straight into your pension, no income tax on it whatsoever. There's also salary sacrifice, which is where your employer says, I tell you what, I'll pay you £100 less and I'll put that £100 in for you, because then no one pays national insurance on it as well. Those are the three ways that you can pay into your pension, but the most important part is you get that tax relief, okay? But pensions are great for other reasons as well. Yes, we'll talk about that solution to getting your income down, perhaps below that £100,000 level, depending on what works for you. But also, the pension, the money in your pension grows in a similar way to how it will grow inside an ISA. There's no UK income taxes or capital gains taxes. So the money made in your pension, it can compound and grow and earn itself lots of money whilst you're just sitting there waiting for your retirement or waiting to take the money out. It is a really good way to invest for the long term. I mentioned compounding. That's basically when your earnings earn money on them. So they keep earning dividends, they keep getting a return, and the returns earn a return. And it's like a snowball. When it really starts building, it can build up really quite quickly over time as well. When it comes time to taking money out, there are some tax advantages. You can take a lump sum or some of your money out without any tax at all. If you've got an employer pension, if you've got an employer, if you're employed, your employer will contribute into your pension for you. So that's money that doesn't come from you. So it's a bit like free money, really, isn't it? And it also can help you with estate planning. There's no inheritance tax on money that's inherited in a pension. So a pension can be passed down through the generations without any inheritance tax on it. And that's currently 40% inheritance tax. So you can see pensions are great. And I do have an omission for you. I love pensions. I'm a big fan of pensions, and I put my hand up and say that I really do. I think they're misunderstood. And I think if you can understand them, you can really be empowered to utilize them to save yourself a lot of money, and also to create a lifestyle in the future that provides you with a standard of living, that's something that will show how hard you've worked to get there. Okay, so let's go through an example though. All right, so let's say you earn £110,000 gross. You contribute £15,000 into your pension. Right, what will happen there is that £15,000 is preserved into your pension, and it will grow free of taxes and boost your retirement income, or boost the legacy for your children and beneficiaries. But importantly, for this webinar here, you'll keep your personal tax allowance. You will receive that 30 free hours of childcare. You will boost your pension savings, as I said, but you're basically going to save thousands of pounds in tax and childcare costs. So that £15,000 will go a long way for you. So really important that that you kind of understand how it works, and you can obviously do this in many ways. If you put this £15,000 in through into a personal pension, that's absolutely fine, as long as you put that in a self-assessment tax return. You will get that that money back. Okay, so you can also, if you've been putting money, by the way, into a self-assessment tax return, and you've been putting money into a personal pension, you can fill out self-assessment tax returns for the past 4 years. So if this is the first time you're hearing it and thinking, oh my goodness, I've been putting money into a pension for the last few years and I've not been filling out a tax return, don't worry, you can fill those out for up to 4 years in the past, meaning that you can claim that tax relief back. So that will hopefully be a bonus for anyone that's not done that. But if you have been earning over £100,000 for many years, there's no way of claiming back the tax that you've paid in previous past years. So hopefully that helps from that point of view. Other solutions that I mentioned, I also mentioned gift aid. A gift aid, a charitable donation, works in much the same way. So if ever you are donating money to charity, even if you are going into a museum or paying access to a museum or something, ask if you can gift aid that, because as you go, if you gift aid any charitable donations, it works in exactly the same way as a pension, except the money's not going into your own pension pot, it's going to that charity. That charity can claim additional tax relief on as well. So the charity gets extra money and you can also reduce that earnings limit and get yourself out of the tax trap. But as I say, the slight difference is it's not going to future you, it's going to a charitable location as well. Now, I mentioned one other option, tax efficient investing. There are many different ways that you can do this. It's basically investing in different options, and what they do is they can give you 30% or more of like a tax refund. Okay, so they don't reduce your income tax, they don't stop you from paying 60% or more depending on your personal situation, but what they do is they allow you to reclaim some of that income tax paid. So I talk here about venture capital trusts, enterprise investment schemes. I strongly urge you to make sure that you get advice or speak to a professional before doing any of these, because they're high risk. But the important thing to bear in mind is they do have tax advantages, and one of those is that you can get a tax refund by investing in them. There are some conditions to that, so it's not always the obvious choice. I'm a big advocate of pensions, but also I do help clients quite often through tax efficient investing as well as pensions, because there's only so much that you can do, and they've each got advantages and disadvantages as well. Okay, so that's the solutions over and done with. My next slide for you, or just to talk to you about, is I've mentioned tax returns and self-assessments quite a few times. Now, a lot of people may not know if they need to complete one, and I've alluded to reasons why you would. For example, if you're a higher rate taxpayer and you've contributed into a personal pension, but there are other reasons as well. So if you've got total taxable income above £100,000, also if you are receiving child benefit and therefore need to pay that high income child benefit charge. But you can see on the screen in front of you all of the reasons why you may need to complete a tax return. You can do them online. They want you to do them all online. You have until 31st of January after the end of the tax year. Tax year runs 6th of April to the 5th of April. I recommend never leaving it until that January. My tax returns are always filed by May. I need to wait for some statements to come through, but I like it to be done so that I can make sure that I pay enough tax. And just a little savings hack for you: if you do complete a self-assessment tax return, if you do need to usually each year pay a tax bill at the end of January, I recommend that you open up a savings account that's dedicated just for tax. And whenever you receive income that's going to need to pay tax on it, put a percentage of it into that tax fund. And what that does is when it gets to the 31st of January and you've got a tax bill to pay, you will have that money not just waiting there for you, so you don't have to scrabble around once a year, or for some people twice a year, to pay your tax bill. It's there, and if you make sure it's in a good interest rate savings account, it will also be earning you a lot of money in the process as well. So basically no drawbacks, and makes paying tax a little bit less painful than it needs to be. Now, where do you go from here? If you're still sitting down and still okay, then that's great. But I would always say, if you're unsure, if it's all a little bit much, I help people every day with situations like this. A lot of times it's situations where they earn over £100,000, or different situations, to help you be as tax efficient as possible. What tax efficiency is it's making sure that you are saving as much money as possible, that you know exactly what you're paying, and you're making sure that you are utilising all the allowances that are given to you and that are there for you. All of those tax reliefs are there for a reason, to be used and to help encourage people to save money. But if it's all a bit much, speak to someone like me who can help you navigate through it and work out what your options are. So I'd love to see if anybody has got any questions.
There's one in the chat there. Can you see that?
Is that? Oh, I did not. So it may just have come to you, or
Read it out. It says, my husband earns roughly £80,000 a year, and I earn just under 40,000. So he loses his childcare benefit, but I don't. Is that right? Or do I lose my benefit too, as it's combined salaries they look at?
Okay, thank you for that question. It doesn't feel like it's right, because it doesn't feel like it's fair. If one partner doesn't earn any money and one partner earns £60,000, you will lose all of your child benefits. But that is a household income of £60,000. If you have two people in a partnership in a household earning £50,000 each, that's a household income of £100,000. They will receive the full child benefit. So I'm really sorry to say that that is correct, that you will lose the child benefit. The only thing that I say is you may want to still receive it, put it into a savings account. So depending on how many children you have, you could still be receiving 5% on it. But if, 5% interest on it, and then you can then pay out a little bit, how I recommend you pay your tax. Let it go into a savings account and do that, or at least still elect for it, but just elect to not get paid it. What that means is that if you end up not working for any reason, or one of your incomes does reduce, you can literally switch it on very, very quickly without needing to apply, which can be quite stressful. So I can see someone with a hand up. Letitia?
Yeah, mine's a little bit morbid, but you mentioned your pensions. If you add into your pension fund, then you don't pay an inheritance tax on it if something happens and you want to pass that on. Is there a process to that? So if I die tomorrow, touch wood, the money that's in my pension pot, who decides where that goes? Is there something that I have to do to put that in place before that would happen?
That is a great question, Letitia. Thank you so much. So there is a process. Anyone that's got a pension, you should have an expression of wish form or a nomination form. Okay, please make sure it is up to date. They are very simple to complete. They usually just involve you adding in who you would want to receive that money after you pass away. And then you sign and date it. You can update it as many times as you want as well. Now, it's called an expression of wish or a nomination form for a reason, though. because it's not legally binding. And the reason that pensions are, you don't pay inheritance tax on them, is because they're actually outside of your estate. Now, your estate is everything that you own. Your pension, you still own it, but it's like a separate entity. It's like it's held in a little bundle outside of your estate for you, which means it can be passed along, but it also means it's not covered by your will. So if you've got a will, it still doesn't mean that your pension will go to who you want it to be left to in your will. By the way, if you don't have a will, write one. Doesn't matter if you have nothing to your name. Having a will saves lots of money for your beneficiaries, saves time, it saves thousands and thousands of pounds going through the courts, and you'll end up paying inheritance tax even if you wouldn't really need to. So definitely get a will, but whether you've got one or not, a pension, fill out your nomination form, your expression of wishes form, and then that will mean that your pension should go to them. There is a process that would need to go through once you pass away, but it's usually very simple, and it then passes down to who you wanted it to go to, and it will then get split up into them. You just need to choose kind of how it's all paid out, but again, a financial advisor or the pension provider will be able to help you with that, or help your beneficiaries with that, should the worst happen and should it be needed. Does that answer your question, Letitia?
Yeah, that's great, thank you.
Okay, great. We've got a question in the chat from Richard. Can I ask a question about tax on savings? In the process of moving in with your partner, I'd like to park the money from the sale of the house in a high interest savings account. Can I ask how tax is paid on the investment, please? If it's in a 1-year bond, at completion, you pay the tax somewhere separately, or is my tax band adjusted? Okay, really good. The latter is not as appealing. I'd like to maintain monthly income as it stands. Okay, so you will be taxed. So any interest you receive is not taxed. Okay, so you would need to have a look at the different savings products. If it's a 1-year bond, you only receive the tax in one lump sum. Other accounts, you may receive it monthly. So do have a look at different accounts. Do make sure you're using your ISA allowance. Okay, that's definitely. Do make sure you if you're putting it into a savings account, that you spread your risk. If it's for more than 6 months that you're going to be saving, and if it's in a 1-year savings bond, then it will be. Don't have more than £85,000 with any provider. If a bank goes bust, they may have used your savings to lend out to people for mortgages, loans, or to invest themselves, meaning you may not get your money back, but you are covered up to £85,000 per provider. Unless you invest in National Savings and Investment, that's the government, so you are covered. But yes, when it comes to tax, you're taxed on your savings, okay, the time that it comes in. So if you get £1,000 in interest paid to you on the 6th of April, even if the money's been saved from the 5th of April last year, it will be taxed on you as at receiving it on the 6th of April. So that's really important. That's another reason why my self-assessments don't go in until May, is I wait for all of my interest statements from all of my savings providers. So just have a look, and you may need to even speak to the provider or look at their terms and conditions to spread it around. You each get a personal savings allowance. If you're a basic rate taxpayer, it's £1,000. If you are a higher rate taxpayer, it's £500, and if you're an additional rate taxpayer, you don't get one at all. So it's definitely worth getting money into an ISA. You may not like premium bonds, but premium bonds are tax efficient. There's no tax on them. So if you put £50,000 into premium bonds, you tend to find that you're not guaranteed to get any interest, because interest is paid via like a draw. but they do pay it on average at 4.65%. So you may want to consider that as well. And if you're not married, there may be, you could still ask your partner to share in it, and they could also use their allowances or ISA allowances, but that's obviously up to you. And passing money between each other, that there could be other repercussions. I know that's probably not exactly what you wanted to hear, but I hope, does that answer your question, Richard? So as well.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's very helpful. Actually, the ISA point that you just made, I've never really thought of before with my partner, because I've not really wanted to mix. Kind of the ISA is kind of a secondary pension for me, something I'm saving separately. Just in terms of the say if a lump sum of interest is paid after a year, in terms of handing that tax over to the government, will it be kind of self-assessment, or I've heard that it kind of the bank calculates it, and it basically your band is adjusted, your tax band.
Right, good question. But from quite a few years ago, the bank stopped calculating it. It is through self-assessment. So anybody that earns over their personal savings allowance and therefore needs to pay tax on it, you need to add it to your self-assessment, I'm afraid. So, okay.
Perfect, thanks. And just one last question. Is that in January or April?
So your self-assessment, you can start completing it any time from the 6th of April, after, obviously, the day after the tax year ends. If you're completing an online self-assessment, the last day you can press the button and submit it is the 31st of January following that year. Please don't leave it that late. Please, please. Because you can imagine it could cause problems. If you don't submit it, and literally it's 1 minute past midnight, there's fines. And you really don't want to start entering that territory as well. So hopefully that's helpful. But yeah, so you should also, there are some providers, you still have to request a statement, but they're not the big ones. You should receive, if you've got an online login with your banks, you should, in your document, you should receive a tax statement, but some do need you to request it, which is a bit of a pain.
Perfect. No, that's been incredibly helpful. Thank you very much.
Great, and good luck with it.
Yeah, thank you.
I had a quick question on the salary sacrifice for a pension. So
yes,
that would save your employer 12%, 12%?
13.8%. So yes.
So if I was to arrange that with them, would that go into a private pension? How would that?
Okay. So if you organise for salary sacrifice, I do have a lot of like directors and or managing directors of companies who have moved to salary sacrifice when they realise how it's done. You pay exactly the same way. It's still the same employee, it's still the same workplace pension, but instead of you putting your employer contribution in and then the employee putting their contribution in via the net payee way, you can pay it all for them through that. What happens is it's not something that's easily changed around, though. That's why you need to make sure it works for everybody, because yes, if someone's earning £120,000 and they agree to salary sacrifice, their salary is now £100,000. That's great from what we've heard, but it also means that they can't just 1 month go, I just want to change my contributions or anything. It needs to be, and for tax reasons, for it to count, it needs to be for a long period of time. But yes, the employer will save almost 14%, and the employee will save, obviously, well, now we heard after the autumn statement yesterday, national insurance, but you'll save national insurance. So it will be 12% and 2%, or 10% and 2% once those changes go through, or whatever national insurance is at the time you're watching this, you'll save that as well as income tax. So Does that make sense? Does that answer your question, Richard?
Yeah, so could I use it as a way of leveraging a slightly larger raise that only goes into the pension because the company's saving 13.8?
Yes. Yes, I do. Any clients of mine, I've had a few that have received a full refund from their employer into their pension of that 13.8%. So quite a few clients, if you don't ask, you don't get as well, but it's something that you absolutely could negotiate. It's a way of earning more money without the employer actually parting with a single penny extra. Salary sacrifices can be really powerful. So yes, very good negotiation tactic, and very useful, and also, yeah, for everybody. But it does come with some caveats as well. So obviously some people may prefer not to, but it's good. And then they just put it through the contract, as long as it's contracted that's their salary, and that they're getting this X% as a pension contribution as well. So it needs to all be put in the contract, but yes.
What would happen if, say, you were earning £99,000 and then you receive a bonus at the end of the financial year that you would want to put in as a lump sum into a pension? Is that at all possible, or do you need to plan ahead and know what your bonus is going to be?
Some employers provide, when they pay a bonus, they actually give them an option to put it straight, or put a portion of it straight into their pension. So it's also something that needs to be agreed. It depends on the employer. A lot of times they just don't realise they pay a bonus or they pay commission, and if it ends up that there's the possibility that someone could end up crossing a barrier they just don't want to cross at the end of the tax year. For a lot of people, it's just they fill out a simple form and then they can just bonus sacrifice is a good way. If not, you can pay into your pension pretty quickly. So even if you've got a personal pension and you want to do it, you should, as long as you've got enough notice to make a transfer and just to get it in, should be fine. A lot of people shouldn't be notified of a bonus on the 5th of April and paid it at the same time. As long as you've got a little bit of notice, it will also be absolutely fine. But you're right, that is a problem if you suddenly kind of get to the 6th of April and have a look at your bank balance or something and think, I didn't work this out properly. Oh, I thought I'd earned 99,000, but actually if I add it all up, that was 105,000. Oh God, it is too late. That is a shame, but it would be too late on that. So better to check these things in advance. Hold your employer to account and just make sure that you know exactly what you've earned and that you're keeping track of it, or that you've got a financial advisor or someone like me that can help you with that, to make sure you don't end up waking up in the morning of 6th of April suddenly realizing that you've just paid most of your bonus away in tax. Okay.
And then national insurance contributions, you can so when you're on mat leave, are you still contributing, or does it depend how long that you're on maternity leave for? So say that you're taking unpaid maternity, for example. Yeah,
well, you won't be paying national insurance, but if you're on mat leave, so this is starting to get a little bit out of my realms of comfort, but I believe that that maternity pay contributes them for you, but it's probably that one is one to just double check that you're that everything's going through, and that it's because if you go over a tax year, that's when the issue starts coming. If you've paid enough national insurance for 1 year, but then there's a gap, usually it should all be covered with your either maternity pay, if you're getting paid maternity pay, or not. Depends. If you're on a self-employed contract, then obviously you may not be paying national insurance, and that's an issue. So it does depend on, I guess, each employer, and therefore could be part of negotiations as well. But I would probably defer and say I'd want to check that one out.
One more question in the chat.
Oh, okay, so we've got Tony, as a financial advisor, do you support self-employed people to complete self-assessments? Can you recommend anyone to help with this? So I support a lot of self-employed people, but I will work with them to help them with their pensions and with the tax planning and advice. And I can refer to accountants or bookkeepers, and I do. I use one myself, not because I kind of need the help with it, because of the timing. So I can always, if you wanted to, but it's not part of my service, so therefore it would more just be just referring on. But yeah, so if you're self-employed, you do tend to find that not a lot, all of the onus is on yourself, because you don't have an employer to create that workplace pension and pay into a pension for you. You won't get sick pay, you won't get that maternity pay or anything, but there are people out there that can help you. So
any other questions from anyone?
I was just going to say, Naomi, if you could make some recommendations, then we can forward that on to anyone who will just I'll do like a wrap up of the session, and then we can forward that on so Tony can maybe have some people to get in touch with.
Okay, I can let you know. If it's also easy, as you can see, I've put up a page. I send out a monthly email newsletter. I do have a YouTube channel, and on my YouTube channel you'll see that there's collaborations or webinars that I've held with other professionals like bookkeeper or accountancy firms that are there as well. So you can also kind of find and see if you like them as well. Do bear in mind that whenever you're getting a professional, if I refer anyone, it's not part of my advice. I'm in no way responsible. I don't know if they'll work for you or if they're suitable. I don't get a payout for it, but you may, you need to make sure they're going to gel with you if you're working with them. So that may help you if you have a look on at some of like the webinars or anything as well. But yeah, absolutely, very happy to let you know some of the people that I use or that my clients use, and please do your research. It's not I don't know if they'd be right for you or anything as well. So